Hello everybody and welcome to the January 24th, 2019 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. Anyway, first off, the pro-life movement went absolutely insane over the weekend, and I am always in favor of that. Because Andrew Cuomo and the New York Senate recently approved the bill to allow late-term abortion. Now, I have read up on late-term abortion for the record, and I do find it to be very disgusting. I also think that if you would do that to your child, you should not be a parent. So it's a win-win. Now, it should be noted that this legislation only actually legalizes late-term abortion when the mother's life is in danger, or when the baby is going to die anyway, which makes sense. However, the pro-life movement doesn't know that, because it's the pro-life movement. Matt Walsh was directly informed this on Twitter, and here's what he had to say. It may sometimes be necessary to deliver the child early to save the mother's life, but why would you ever need to inject a child with poison before delivering him? How does that help in the preservation of the mother's life? Please explain, thank you. So basically, this law is never going to be used ever, and there will be absolutely no more late-term abortions in New York than there were before this legislation, because it's only in one scenario that, according to you, does not exist. What is your issue here? Of course, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo had the audacity to do this while being against the death penalty, which kills innocent people 4% of the time, but none of that matters. Because he created a loophole no one is going to use because it never would actually apply. Nothing about this makes any sense. So Leela Rose, founder of Live Action, quote-tweeted his previous tweet, the death penalty is morally indefensible and has no place in the 21st century, with lethal injection of babies. You ever notice how these people never actually use the proper terms medically? In utero are morally indefensible. Well, why did you make it plural, by the way? Just a little side note thing. And have no place in the 21st century. Pro-choicer has an entire worldview changed when pro-lifer reminds him it is the 21st century. Now, to be fair, there are parts of this legislation I oppose. For instance, it allows non-doctors to perform abortions. I disagree with that. I think only doctors should be allowed to, because otherwise, what's the point of having medical licensing? However, at the end of the day, what does this change? If the pro-life movement is to be believed, nothing. That is, unless they're actually talking about the legislation, in which case it will probably end New York or something. Anyway, going to 2020. Apparently some other random guy has launched an exploratory committee for president, but the media is actually taking him seriously because he was the mayor of somewhere in Indiana, or he still is. Mayor of South Bend, Pete Buttigieg, formed an exploratory committee yesterday for President of the United States. Let's meet Pete on his website. Pete is a millennial mayor. That's really what you're running on? Afghanistan war veteran. Okay, that's not a bad thing. And husband. That's also not a bad thing. I don't hate you yet. Pete was the first elected mayor in 2011 at only 29 years old, and re-elected in 2015 with 80% of the vote. In case you're wondering, that specific city had a Democratic mayor every year since 1972. Under his leadership, South Bend has reimagined its role in the global economy with job growth and major investments in advanced industries with focus on data and technology. What does any of that even mean? Pete serves as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy Reserve, so you're going back to that now. Okay, you can't tell a coherent story. And took an unpaid 7-month leave during his mayoral term for a deployment to Afghanistan. For his counterterrorism work, he owned a Joint Service Commendation Medal. Okay. That's good. In 2017, he ran for the Democratic National Committee chair, earning national praise for his clear message and emphasis on rebuilding the Democratic Party from the ground up in every community. Okay, a 50-state strategy, not a bad idea. He currently serves the chair of the Automation and Impacts of American Cities Task Force, the United States Conference of Mayors. So, some nowhere job that no one's ever heard of. The Washington Post has called him the most interesting mayor you've never heard of. And President Obama named him one of 4 Democrats who represent the future of the Democratic Party. Lol. Okay, I'm being dismissive, but could Pete work? The answer is yes, in theory, but I don't know if he'd work in 2020. Most notably because he's only the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and Indiana is a Republican state as it is. So the odds of him winning under that are very low. Typically it's senators or governors who become presidents. I'm not saying that Ben couldn't work his way up to that role. However, I don't think he can just go from mayor to president. With that said, I want to stress I do not hate Pete, but I cannot pronounce his last name. I'm just going to call him Pete. I don't hate Pete. If anything, I'm looking through his Twitter. I've seen a lot of the stuff he's said over the years. I like him. I think he'd be a good president, or at least a good senator or something on the line. For the record, it's pronounced Boot Edge Edge, according to his Twitter. Boot Edge Edge. God dang it, the media's not going to like you for that name. Where was I going? However, I simply feel like he's playing his cards too soon. He shouldn't be running for president yet. He should be waiting until he builds some steam. Although, to be fair, he could build some steam now and then come back next time. In 2024 or 2028, depending on the results of this election, and then win. However, that's a giant if, and I think that he may actually even be using this to advance his political career at a lower level. He may actually be using this to help run for governor or run for senator or something along those lines. And I think that would actually be a very smart move on his part. But with that said, I feel like he should just do that and realize that mayors typically aren't very well covered when it comes to presidential elections. If anything, state governments, especially local and state governments, are the least covered government. They're the ones that can get away with the most because of that. Anyway, that's it. I'm Ephrom, and good night.